By now you probably know that American comics have not been doing very well. And even now, as we're returning back to normal, comics are still bleeding money, comic creators are still not making much money. So naturally, people want to create an enemy. I saw a lot of people talking about Erik Larsen's comments on the matter, and the enemy that he's pointing to is piracy. Now, I've talked about piracy on the channel before. I've talked about comics versus piracy and how it doesn't make that much of a difference for a multitude of reasons. But let's just play devil's advocate. Through Erik Larsen's lens of how piracy is affecting him personally as a comic creator. Some of you might be thinking, well, why does he care? He already got paid for the comics that he did. Some comic creators do, in fact, get royalties, although it can be pretty rare. But even disregarding royalties, focusing on the industry itself not doing good, will then in turn mean that they will not be able to keep as many employees. People will have more trouble getting work in an industry that doesn't do well. It's kind of like the pro-capitalism argument that if a business is doing well, then the employees are also doing well because they're able to get work. If people are pirating comics rather than buying them, the industry won't do well, and therefore comic creators will lose their jobs over time. But then one has to wonder, is piracy really the reason that the comic industry is not doing well? I think that there are multiple reasons that the comic industry is not doing well, but the main reason I think is that the fans have been upset for a very long time now. They've been constantly complaining about the quality of the comics being put out, and for the most part they've been disregarded. Well, what do you think is going to happen when you disregard fans? They're not coming back. And of course we all know about the drama with Comixgate and how divisive the comics community was for a long time, still is. But if you divide your community, you're going to get less sales because you're going to be forced to take a side, and whatever side you take is going to be limited to those people that you can sell your comics to, because the other side won't want your comics anymore. So you're essentially cutting your sales in half by choice, by creating this divisiveness. And even worse, if the side you picked to be on does not have loyal fans, then you're slicing your sales even more, because now even the people that you chose to stand up for are not buying your comics. Here Erik Larsen says, on the piracy debate, there is no debate. It's criminal behavior. People are struggling to make a living and you're taking what they're creating without giving them compensation. There is no justification. That simply is just not true. There are multiple justifications in different scenarios. I think one of the biggest problems with our country right now is the fact that people are very pessimistic. The fact is that if people like your book, they will buy it. They will at least try to buy it. People want to support content that they like. People want merchandise of content that they like. If people pirated your book and they didn't like it, then there's no chance they would go out and buy it afterwards. It's basically the equivalent of opening up a comic in the shop and reading it before buying it, which I understand some comic shops don't allow. I'm always very frustrated when I go to check out the manga section and all the manga is covered in plastic so you can't open it up and flip through the pages. Stop doing that. It's not even that I'm going to read the whole entire manga. It's just that I need to flip through the pages to figure out if this is the correct volume that I need. I can't do that if there's plastic over it. You could even apply this to a library. If you go to a library to read something for free and you like it, you'll go out and buy it so that you own it. If you actually think about it, these pirating sites are a lot like a digital library. The main difference is just that it's able to reach a mass amount of people rather than just a local community. But it's the same practice of sharing something that was bought with multiple people. So a lot of people pirate things because they want to make sure that they actually like something before they buy it. I'm definitely guilty of doing this. I'm always really frustrated when I buy something first and then realize that I don't like it and I didn't want it later. And in order to fix that, I have to go back to the store and return the book. Well, what's the difference between me buying a book, reading it, not liking it, returning it, as opposed to me reading something online first, not liking it, not buying it in the first place? You still won't have my money, and I still will have read the book. Now, another huge reason why people pirate something is just because it's more convenient to pop it open on your computer. Piracy sites are actually very convenient to use, especially when it comes to comics and manga. It's way easier to go on a piracy site than it is to go on Comixology. Comixology sucks. It has sucked for a very long time, and there's never been any push to improve that website. There's never been any push on the industry to make their own website, make a decent app that's cheap and affordable. You know that manga has already done this. The American comic industry could very well make it easier and better to get comics digitally the legal way. They have not made that investment because they don't care about digital sales. Digital sales have always been relatively low. Now, I've bought digital, I've read comics digitally before. I don't have too much of a problem with it. I would mostly just want to read digital if I wanted to, like I said before, read the comic first before owning it. That's another thing with digital sales, is you don't really feel like you own it, especially if it's on the cloud and not actually on your computer. I think one way that they could solve that, bring that price way down, make some money off of people who want to read the comic first before officially owning it in physical. I know that some manga publishers, they do digital first, so if you want to read the comic first before anyone, you buy it in digital. And one of the things that I think Kodansha does really well is that they have these huge sales where they have all the manga half off. So it basically encourages a sales surge. And you can buy the digital book for half the price that you would buy if you had it in physical, because let's face it, digital sales should not be the same price as physical. It just doesn't make any sense. But my main advice to combat piracy has always been compete with it. Why are these piracy sites that do not have nearly as much money as these major companies in the industry, not nearly as much reason to invest in these piracy websites, why are they doing better than the actual industry when it comes to creating an easy, convenient way to get comic books? The industry should have been investing in this, and instead they just didn't care enough. So now the pirates get the money. Looking into more of his tweets, you see this one where he screenshots a Google search to prove his point. We have the authorsguild.org. Online piracy is a major factor contributing to the decline of authors' income. Each year, the publishing industry loses hundreds of millions of dollars in lost sales to piracy. Source, please? How do you even calculate that? Like, how do you know that the people pirating these books are not also buying them? Like I said, I've pirated stuff that I've owned just because it's easier to hop onto the piracy site than it is to pop out the DVD and put it in the player. But naturally, this is coming from the authorsguild.org. Obviously, they're gonna have an anti-piracy stance. Last one, he says, my biggest beef is not so much with pirating, which I get. It's the righteous indignation of those who engage in it as though their actions are noble and or justified. Spare me your excuses. Now, to be fair, I don't think that people should be pro-piracy per se, because like I said, if you like something, you should buy it. If you want to support a creator, you should buy their stuff. That's how you support them. But if you like a manga series, for example, and you discourage people from buying the series because they should just pirate it just because, that doesn't really make any sense, because if you like the series, you'll want to support it. I don't have a problem with the comics industry finding out ways to combat piracy. I just don't think that they know how to do it. It's like all these anti-piracy measures that they do to make it so that digital downloads can't be shared or stuff like that. That's not gonna really fix the major problem. And the major problem is that the industry itself just is not prepared for the internet. They just never adapted to be as convenient or as easy as all these other piracy sites are. Comixology still sucks to this day. Even after the pandemic, when the digital sales were rising, didn't get any better. And then of course we have this problem of digital comics just being too high in price. Your digitals should be at least half of what it would be in physical, for all the reasons that I listed before. You don't really own it, and it's really just so that you get a preview. It's the equivalent of reading it in the comic book shop, just to see if you like it before you buy it in physical. That's how they should be treating digital copies of comics. The idea that they're treating them as the exact same thing, like you won't buy it in physical if you buy it in digital, so you might as well pay full price, then don't make any sense. But you already know all this stuff, because I've talked about this before. I think the major reason why comics are not doing very well lately has a lot to do with the fact that fans are just unhappy. Of course, you know, there's the pandemic. Sure, you could point the finger at piracy and say maybe that's part of the reason, but how do you know that the people pirating your comics would have bought your comics if they didn't have piracy? Like, how do you know those were your buyers? Just because someone reads something for free doesn't mean that they like it. Some people just read it because it's free. Some people read it so that they can give bad reviews online. But those are just some of my thoughts, all of those thoughts that you knew already. If you have your own thoughts or opinions on the matter, things that I didn't cover, things that I might have missed or glossed over, tell me about them down below in the comments section. Let's open up a discussion there. Remember to like the video if you did, in fact, enjoy. Thank you for watching as usual. I'll have more videos out for you real soon. Till then,